Hi, coronavirus seems to pervade all our lives. And as a matter of fact, it's scary when you see the people dying by thousands. It's terrifying when you see people being herded into their apartments, into their houses. It is really shocking when the children cannot play in the parks and the old cannot go for their constitution. But these things can be accepted. What is really horrible, what is really terrifying, what is really sending a chill down my spine is that the concept of individualism is likely to be buried fathom deep, and it may never come back to life. For centuries, individualism as a notion that every human being has intrinsic value, has underlying ideas about the societal organization, economy, and justice. But now, individuals' inalienable rights and freedoms are coming under immense pressure. As a matter of fact, individualism in the West originated from Renaissance. It was Enlightenment which created the concept of individual being important. It believed in the moral worth of individual, and his or her interest could take precedence over the societal group's interest. This gave birth to laissez-faire capitalism, free trade. And free trade basically ensures that the individual is a free market agent. But is it so? Now, the Western style individualism had its heyday after the Second World War, and with the large parts of Europe were behind the Iron Curtain under communism. China was in the pre-market mode, and the sheer hegemony of US ensured a bull run for the frontierman idea of individualism, rugged, proud individual at the center, spinning progress on the unbroken thread of the freedom. And the classic example of that was Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. But this was one part of individualism. There was another form of individualism, and that was seen at the same time, but it was based on the belief system of Mahatma Gandhi and his mentors like Ruskin Bond, Carlyle, and American philosopher Thoreau. The individualism of the second part, promoted by Thoreau, Ruskin, Mahatma Gandhi, was based on the spiritual roots. Gandhi recognized the Western style of individualism could end up in sheer materialism, where Bayman was a god. He saw the individual as an autonomous moral agent, not just something, ask somebody with the means to fulfill the personal desires. The individual's inviolable rights, someone who could contribute to the societal growth. And that spiritual tone gave individualism a new dimension. So, on one side, we had a Western concept which was promoted by Voltaire, Hobbes, Locke, the American War of Independence, the French concept of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and onwards. And then the spiritual individualism. So the individual's inviolable human rights, according to the second one, were at the heart of the societal progress. It was devoid of materialism, and that concept now has been adopted in the concept of GDH, gross domestic happiness, as opposed to gross domestic product. Now, while the one idea of individualism, the Western individualism, was extremely important, it gave rise, propelled progress towards innovation, and that process continued for 3 centuries. For 300 years, we had innovation right from the printing press, Gutenberg's press, Industrial Revolution 1, Industrial Revolution 2, 3, and of course, now the fourth is started. So, for 3 centuries, the Western style individualism, the concept of laissez-faire, the concept of individual freedom and being the heart of the progress, exemplified by actress Shran, was responsible for the growth of entrepreneurship, creativity of the artists, public intellectuals gaining a global marketplace for ideas, products, and services. The second idea has driven the largest state and societal intervention of welfare and patronage. And the patronage and the welfare is of the vulnerable classes, the weaker classes of society. And this was something which has two dimensions, as I said, the material and the spiritual. But it's a grand experiment spanning more than 3 centuries. Of course, I fully appreciate that even now, each individual with a social security net is not fully actualized. But however, for the last decade, something sinister is happening. Individualism and the premise of the individuals are being seriously threatened. And there are three key reasons for that. The first is terrorism. Terrorism combined with economic collapse, recession, is responsible for destroying the individual, the freedom. When 9/11 happens, it changed everything overnight. It was the biggest shock treatment to the individual's freedom. People in US, the absolute stronghold of individualism and liberalism, had to give up the cherished ideas of freedom and privacy in exchange for the empty promise of public safety. Now, I'm calling it an empty promise because despite the sacrifice of individual freedom, terrorism continued and is becoming more and more potent and evident. Then came the recession, the economic meltdown of 2008, and then we entered a new era, the post global world, and the rise of the authoritarian regimes of consolidated state power, whether in China or Putin or Cuba, Bolivia, Latvia, Philippines, name it, host of the country. And this post globalization world, when the authoritarian regimes became strong, naturally meant that the individual's liberties would be sacrificed, and that's what happened. The romantic patriotism was no longer the in thing. So individuals' love for the country could be expressed as honest criticism earlier, but now it shifted to harder nationalism, my country right and wrong, the same concept that Hitler had propounded, which Mussolini had propagated. The result of this was dissent was discouraged, and to disagree meant being disagreeable. It was simply impossible to talk in rational terms, and this neither independent individual further of the political stage. And when you go off the political stage, naturally you cannot be on the economic platform as well. Now, the second reason was the rise of the internet giants with a massive social platform. These appeared to be the primacy of free individual. Anytime, anywhere, anything, consumer was the king. But was he the king? The laborer employee was now a self-employed entrepreneur. The citizen was now a net citizen, expressing his opinion on the world. Unfortunately, Individual choice turned out to be an illumination, a mirage, a shimmering mirage at the most. This was the beginning of the new form of capitalism. I call it surveillance capitalism, where the shades of 1984, a Orwellian dystopia, were seen. AI further gave rise to the further dystopias where Huxley's Brave New World was evident. So, the capitalism was the gig worker, underpaid, overworked, and consumer is but a packet of data. And the free will can be manipulated, changed by the artificial intelligence. So how are you a human being? How do you call yourself a free agent when your very choice is at the mercy of the bean counters? The same technologies enable the government and the state to oversee what you're doing, and the individual rights and the privacies were sacrificed at an alarming rate. And the third word became interdependent. The country's sovereignty was no longer sovereignty. Otherwise, how could the president of one country be punished by the International Court of Justice? It happened in three cases at least. Then, climate change and pollution that knows no borders. Antibiotic resistance knows no borders. Pandemics knows no borders. Ebola from Africa could make people in America sick. And the saying, very old saying, that when a butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, there can be earthquake in Italy, became a reality. The burning of the Indonesian forest could keep the whole of Asia gasping for breath. So the whole way it was an assault on individualism. And now comes COVID-19 pandemic, which is supposed to be the most severe endemic, though it's not. And it's a last nail in the coffin of individualism. That is, unless you and I are alert. It has quickly led us to surrender our personal privileges and submit to the dictates of the state or the decision of the group. The group can be your apartment society, residents welfare association, the village, the mayor of the city, the premier, the prime minister, the president, whosoever it may be. So their personal privileges, your personal, are subject to the dictates of that person. If they are benign and sensible, it's good. If they are not, then you suffer. You have rightly given your individual freedom because we sense the danger from exercising this freedom willfully. So this exchange of freedom was willful and supposed to be in good sense. But the frontiersman idea of individualism that stand exposed because we see our action would impact others. We must have beware of losing the positive aspects of individualism. That's most important. You have got to ensure that the individual identity is not subsumed by a cohesive group unaccountable to any structure or to the due process of law, the rule of law. It is one thing to obey the government's order. It is another thing to succumb to irrational fears. So carry out the government orders wherever they may be, but don't be afraid. Don't take all ropes to be snakes. We are already witnessing the rise of vigilantism and even mob rule. Look the way that doctors are treated in Indore in India or in Uttar Pradesh. The security personnel were beaten. The doctors are spared off. The patients started roaming around naked in the presence of the female nurses. Fearful villagers are banning all outside doctors. Doctors are prevented from returning to the urban homes. And the policemen are using their batons indiscriminately. Now, such a reaction to this pandemic could be the dirage, an elegy to the positive individual freedom in the foreseeable future. The society has to act and act quickly and creatively to restore the balance between the individual and the social group, be it a small group or be it the government. I agree, no man is an island, but let's also not forget that there's an intrinsic value of every individual human being, and that value is the foundation of all good societies. The question is, would you let that intrinsic value get lost in the cacophony created by fear mongers? I hope not. I trust not. But let's keep our fingers crossed. I feel that our freedom is in peril. If we don't defend it, we'll be transformed into dumb driven cattle and lose the right to be called human beings. Think about it.